When the storm finally broke, the plains lay slick and silent, washed clean by relentless rain. Tiana's sharp eyes scanned the horizon, the wind still tugging at her hair and the sodden fabric of her tunic. But what she found out there beyond the herd of scattered cattle made her heart stop and her pulse jump with a fear she hadn't felt since her first battle. Two figures lay sprawled on the wet grass, half buried in mud and broken branches, and in an instant she knew that the decisions she would make in the next few moments could determine not only her own life, but the fate of her entire Apache family. Tiana was no ordinary girl. Standing head and shoulders above most men in the valley, her presence alone demanded attention and respect. She had been trained from birth in the arts of combat, survival, and leadership, the kind of warrior daughters whispered about around fires long after the men had gone to sleep. Her muscles were lean, yet powerful, honed by years of running through the rough canyons, wrestling with the rivers in flood, and training beneath the unforgiving sun. And yet, for all her strength, she moved with a grace and precision that spoke to a keen mind and a heart that understood the subtleties of life as well as the harshness of death. Beside her, Itel, her younger sister, followed in her footsteps, towering and formidable in her own right. Nearly as tall as Tiana, Itel carried the same blend of power and agility, though youth lent her a softer edge, a flexibility in motion that could turn the tide in a skirmish if she needed it. The sisters had already learned the price of refusing the path others wanted for them. Itel had rejected the marriage proposed by the son of their chief, a choice that marked them both for pursuit and punishment by those who valued control over heart. Now, as they pressed through the aftermath of the storm, the wet grass clinging to their boots, they were acutely aware that danger stalked them just beyond the hills and ridges. The plains were silent save for the occasional drip of rainwater from cloud-bent branches and the low rumble of distant thunder, a final warning from the storm that the world remained untamed and merciless. Each step they took was measured careful as they made their way across the sodden fields, moving like shadows in a land that knew neither mercy nor pause. Even a seasoned warrior like Tiana felt the chill of isolation, the haunting thought that the wind could carry the sound of their presence to the wrong ears. Every instinct screamed caution. Every heartbeat whispered that survival was never guaranteed in the wild expanses of the West. And yet there was hope, a fragile and dangerous hope. They were not alone in this world, and if they were careful, they might just find sanctuary in a place few Apache ever trusted, a cabin on the edge of their territory, inhabited by a man named Ezekiel. Unlike the others, who claimed the plains for personal gain, Ezekiel was different. White-skinned, yes, but known for a quiet compassion and a respect for life that crossed the boundaries of blood and clan. For months, rumors had drifted on the wind tales of his fairness, of the rare times he had helped travelers, and of his subtle but firm sense of justice. If any outsider could aid them without treachery, it would be him. The challenge, of course, was reaching him. Between their current position and his cabin stretched open fields and shallow gullies, places where a misstep could mean capture or death. The remnants of the storm had left the terrain treacherous mud, sucking at boots, the rivers swollen with angry currents, and the sky above threatening another round of rain. Every step toward Ezekiel was a calculated risk, a gamble with life itself. Tiana felt the weight of it. The survival of herself, her sister, and the unwitting souls who might come into the path of their pursuers. And there in the distance, just beyond the veil of mist and storm, lay the cabin, a simple structure, unassuming, yet holding the promise of aid, the possibility of turning the tide against the relentless danger that had dogged them from the start. Tiana's heart beat in sync with the distant thunder, a rhythm of anxiety and resolve. Every nerve in her body tensed, every muscle coiled like a spring. She knew that the coming hours would demand more than skill or courage. They would demand choices that could not be undone. The plains stretched endless. The wind carried whispers of threat. And yet, in that fragile moment between life and peril, Tiana and Itel moved forward determined to survive. The storm had passed, but its shadow lingered, and the choices they were about to make would echo across the wild lands for years to come. The mud clung to their boots like a warning, each step heavier than the last. Tiana's hands were slick with blood, both hers and her sister Etel's, as they navigated the churned-up earth toward the faint outline of Ezekiel's cabin. Etel's breathing was ragged shallow, the result of a deep gash across her ribs, dark blood seeping through the soaked fabric of her tunic. Tiana's own forearm was sliced from a jagged branch, a sting that only sharpened her focus. Both sisters bore the marks of their flight-torn clothing, bruised flesh, and exhaustion that clawed at every sinew, yet they moved with a strength that belied their injuries. They were giants in stature and spirit, yet still human enough to bleed, to falter, to fear. Tiana knew the journey ahead was perilous. Ezekiel was their only hope, the man who could offer sanctuary and aid, but approaching him meant crossing open fields under the watchful eyes of those who would see them dead for defiance. Federal marshals patrolled the plains, a relentless force that had little regard for Apache law, and rogue members of their own tribe had been dispatched to capture Etel for her refusal of marriage. Every passing minute increased the risk each heartbeat, a reminder that hesitation could be fatal. Supporting her sister with a firm but careful grip, Tiana directed their steps, her mind racing with calculations only a seasoned warrior could make. The swaying of Etel under her arm, the unsteady terrain, and the looming threat from above and behind tested every ounce of her leadership. Yet Tiana moved with the same quiet authority she had learned as a child, under her father's watchful eye, dictating where to step, when to pause, and how to shield her sister from the worst of the environment. Her voice, low and steady, offered not just instruction, but reassurance, a reminder that, despite the chaos, they were still capable of survival. The journey was a gauntlet. Mud sucked at their boots. Puddles reflected the gray sky, and hidden gullies threatened to swallow them whole. The occasional cry of a hawk or distant rolling thunder sounded like a herald of danger. And yet Tiana pressed on, driven by an instinct as ancient as the land itself, the will to live, to protect her family, and to honor the code that had been instilled in her since birth. Each step carried the weight of responsibility. Failure was not an option. She paused briefly to assess Etel's wound, pressing clean strips of cloth against the gash to stem the bleeding. The younger sister's eyes, though clouded with pain, met Tiana's with unwavering trust. Etel knew her sister's strength and judgment, and for a fleeting moment the world narrowed to just the two of them and the cabin that lay ahead. Tiana's own memories stirred a boy she had rescued months ago in a neighboring tribe, half drowned and feverish saved, only because she had chosen action over fear. That act had earned a debt of blood, a bond that would ripple forward into the choices she now faced. The law of her people, steeped in honor and obligation, weighed on her mind as heavily as the mud on her boots. The threat was tangible. Figures moved on the distant ridges, shadows of approaching hunters or marshals, their intentions unknown but unmistakably deadly. Tiana's every sense was heightened, the sound of snapping branches, the glint of metal under a low-hanging branch, the sudden silence of the wind, as if it too held its breath. Each decision had to be precise. Each movement could spell survival or death. She adjusted her grip, supporting her sister while keeping her own body ready to react. Her strategy was simple in principle, but demanding in execution. Move quickly, stay low, and reach the cabin before the hunters closed the gap. The sisters' extraordinary strength, honed through years of relentless training, allowed them to move with surprising speed, despite injuries that would have felled most ordinary travelers. Tiana lifted Etel over a mud-slick ridge, her arms quivering under the combined weight and exhaustion, yet refusing to falter. Every motion, every careful step demonstrated the tension between their humanity and their almost superhuman capabilities. For the audience, it was a vivid display of courage, resilience, and the terrifying beauty of living on the edge of life and death. Finally, through the mist and the rain-soaked landscape, the cabin appeared a humble refuge in the vast wilderness. Tiana felt a surge of relief tempered by caution. They were not yet safe. Every footfall could announce them to an enemy lying in wait. Yet with the walls of the cabin in sight, a plan began to form. She would guide her sister inside, stabilize her injuries, and then confront whatever consequences awaited them outside. Survival was a temporary victory. The real test lay in navigating the law, the hunters, and the delicate honor of Apache tradition that now intertwined with their fate. Tiana's heart pounded with exhaustion, adrenaline, and the weight of responsibility. Every decision from here on would define not only their survival, but the course of events that could ripple far beyond this moment into the realm of law, loyalty, and legacy. The plains had tested them relentlessly, yet the journey to Ezekiel's cabin was just the beginning, a crucible that would forge courage, loyalty, and a new chapter in the story of the Apache sisters. The first echoes of hooves on the muddy ground sent a shiver down Tiana's spine. Through the rising mist, figures emerged federal marshals, their rifles glinting in the gray dawnlight, eyes sharp, and voices carrying authority without question. They had been tracking the Apache sisters for days, relentless and unsympathetic, guided by reports of defiance and the promise of reward for obedience to the law of the territory. The marshals moved with precision, surrounding the cabin with a professional coldness that made even Tiana pause for a moment, weighing the odds. Ezekiel, standing beside her, met her gaze with unease, his mind racing. Though a man of principle and courage, he was still human, untrained in the intricate dance of tribal laws and federal power. Yet in that tense moment, Tiana's calm authority became their lifeline. She stepped forward, her tall frame imposing, yet movements deliberate and controlled. Her voice carried firm, yet steady as she spoke directly to the marshals. "You seek those who fled from our people, but what you see here are lives saved. You must understand the law of my people," she said, eyes locking on the lead marshal. She explained the concept of blood debt, a sacred tenet of Apache tradition. Any life saved by a man or woman outside the tribe who acts to protect the child of a chief earns the protection of that debt. It was a law older than the marshal's authority, a moral compass etched into every Apache's understanding of honor and obligation. Her words were precise, her tone deliberate, showing not just reverence for the law, but mastery of its power. "He saved a life," she said, glancing briefly at Ezekiel, "and for that, our people honor him." The tension in the air was palpable. The marshals shifted uneasy. They had never encountered a situation where federal law and tribal custom intersected so directly, nor had they seen a woman of such formidable stature command respect with a single explanation. For the first time, Ezekiel realized that Tiana's strength was not merely physical. It was strategic, a blend of courage, intelligence, and understanding of human and legal nature that few could match. Inside the cabin, Ezekiel and Tiana exchanged silent calculations. Every second mattered. Outside, rifles rested on shoulders, and fingers hovered near triggers. Inside, decisions had to be swift and precise. Ezekiel understood that any misstep could result in bloodshed, yet Tiana's presence anchored him. She weighed the facts, the marshal's unfamiliarity with Apache law, the legal precedent of blood debts, and the necessity to protect her sister. Her mind worked like a finely tuned instrument, each thought a counter to potential aggression. She positioned Itel behind them, shielding her from view, while presenting herself as the mediator between two worlds, the Apache traditions and the federal laws. Every phrase she spoke was chosen to clarify, not provoke, to assert moral authority without igniting violence. Respect for life is older than any statute, she reminded the marshals, and our customs demand that those who act with courage and mercy be honored, not punished. Her dark eyes, unwavering and intelligent, left no room for doubt about her commitment or her readiness to act. Ezekiel followed her lead, nodding, subtly reinforcing her position with quiet agreement. His own courage was bolstered not by guns or size, but by the calculated brilliance of Tiana's strategy. He felt the weight of history pressing on them. Both decisions made in this cabin could set a precedent, influence relations between settlers and the Apache, and define honor in the West for years to come. The marshals studied them, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. They were trained to dominate, to enforce, yet here stood a woman who had mastered the intersection of law and principle, strength and intellect, courage and diplomacy. The dynamic was unfamiliar and disconcerting. One could sense the mental chess game unfolding, Tiana leveraging centuries-old customs, combined with Ezekiel's willingness to uphold moral justice, creating a shield stronger than any weapon. As the minutes ticked by, the marshal's stance softened not entirely, but enough to allow a fragile equilibrium. Tiana's calm and intelligence had transformed a potentially deadly confrontation into a tense negotiation. It was a vivid lesson in the power of mind and spirit, proof that true strength often lay in understanding strategy and moral clarity, not just in the force of arms. Survival here was about intellect, as much as muscle, wisdom as much as courage. Outside, the wind carried the faint smell of wet earth and pine, a reminder that the world remained untamed. Yet within the cabin, Tiana had carved a sanctuary of law, honor, and reason. The stage was set for the next move, a critical step, where strategy would meet consequence, and where courage would be measured, not in bullets fired, but in lives preserved. The first light of dawn spilled across the plains, washing the cabin and surrounding landscape in a soft golden glow. Out of the morning mist rode Chief Nailish, accompanied by a circle of elders, their faces painted with ceremonial streaks, each expression solemn yet commanding. The very air seemed to tighten with anticipation. The moment had arrived where law, honor, and life itself would converge. Tiana felt every muscle in her body tense, but not with fear. This was a crucible, one that would test courage, loyalty, and the delicate balance between tradition and survival. Chief Nailish dismounted with deliberate grace, his eyes scanning the assembly outside the cabin, the towering Tiana, her sister Itel Ezekiel, and the marshals waiting with measured suspicion. Tiana stepped forward, her posture commanding but calm, recounting the night's events, how Ezekiel had risked his life to save them, how every decision was made under threat of death, and how the blood debt now demanded recognition. Her words carried the weight of truth, precision, and strategy, emphasizing courage, honor, and the sacred obligations of Apache law. The chief listened, silent and unreadable, then called forth his warriors, their towering frames and disciplined movements, a vivid display of power and unity. Even the federal marshals shifted uneasily, realizing that raw force alone could not dictate the outcome. These were not ordinary warriors. They were embodiments of strength, skill, and centuries of tradition, and the calm authority of their young leader, Tiana, underscored every motion. The very sight of them was a lesson in restraint, honor, and intelligence. Then Chief Nailish spoke, his voice carrying across the clearing firm and unyielding. He acknowledged Ezekiel's bravery and invoked the sacred law of blood debt, declaring that any life saved by a man outside the tribe must be honored and protected. The marshals, trained to enforce federal law without question, found themselves caught in a legal and moral paradox. Tradition and justice intersected here in a single moment, where courage and integrity outweighed mere authority. And then, in a decision that surprised all, Chief Nailish extended the ultimate recognition: Ezekiel was adopted into the Apache family. This act went beyond protection. It transformed his identity and bound him to the tribe by honor and law. Furthermore, the chief formally released the previous sibling bond between Tiana and Ezekiel, granting them the right to choose love freely. The two stood side by side, their relief palpable, the tension of the past hours melting into a sense of profound safety and belonging. For the first time in days, the sisters could breathe fully, and Ezekiel could feel the weight of fear lift. The plains around them, still wild and untamed, seemed to exhale alongside them, carrying away the echoes of danger and uncertainty. The marshals lowered their weapons, silently acknowledging the authority and wisdom that had guided the Apache, and recognizing that justice here had been achieved not through confrontation, but through courage, strategy, and moral clarity. Tiana and Ezekiel exchanged a glance, a shared understanding of the extraordinary path that had led them here. The combination of tribal law, human bravery, and respect for life had created a harmony rarely seen on the frontier. The cabin, once a simple refuge, had become the stage for a story of survival, honor, and transformation. As sunlight bathed their faces, the sisters' strength and grace stood as a testament to resilience, and the bond formed with Ezekiel promised a future where love and loyalty could coexist with tradition. The moment's tension softened, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. The wildness of the West remained, but in this small clearing a balance had been achieved, a fleeting, precious equilibrium where law, heart, and honor could coexist. Tiana Etel and Ezekiel had survived the storm, and in doing so, they had forged a path of courage and connection that would endure long after the plains fell silent. With the dust settling and the plains bathed in afternoon sun, Tiana and Ezekiel turned their attention to building a new life together. The trading post that once was a simple cabin transformed into a bustling hub where settlers and Apache alike exchanged good stories and mutual respect. The community grew slowly but steadily, a delicate balance of cultures and traditions, each interaction a testament to the power of understanding and collaboration. Tiana's strength, wisdom, and leadership shaped the settlement, while Ezekiel's fairness and courage earned trust and fostered unity. Together, they forged a place where honor and humanity guided daily life. The lessons of their journey were clear and enduring. Courage, when paired with compassion, could defy fear and change destiny. By respecting law, tradition, and the dignity of others, even the deepest conflicts could find resolution. And decisive action taken at the critical moment had the power to create extraordinary outcomes where none seemed possible. These truths were embodied in every plank laid, every negotiation brokered, and every act of protection extended to friend and stranger alike. On the horizon, the sisters stood tall and proud, Tiana and Itel, towering figures of strength, resilience, and grace. Their presence alone inspired awe, but the love, loyalty, and intelligence behind their eyes reminded all who approached that true power came from character as much as from skill or size. Ezekiel stood between them, a man transformed by experience, courage, and honor, sharing in the triumph that had been forged in the crucible of storm conflict and survival. The trading post was more than a structure. It was a symbol of hope, a testament to the harmony achievable when hearts, minds, and cultures found common ground. As the sun dipped lower, casting golden light over the settlement, a message lingered for all who witnessed. Their story, bravery, and humanity could carve paths through danger. Respect for culture could prevent needless bloodshed, and one right choice at the right moment could ripple outward to create a legacy far greater than imagined. If this story stirred your heart, captivated your imagination, or reminded you of the extraordinary human spirit in the wild frontier, please follow Epic Western Stories, share, and comment below. And if you have your own tales from the West, send them to our email. Let us carry forward the legend together into the next chapter of Frontier Adventure.